I honestly don't think it's an over-exaggeration to say that I've been waiting for conditions like this for probably 3 or 4 years. Honestly, here in the Isle of Man we have very mild climate, increasingly mild, and snow and ice like this is becoming very, very hard to find as a landscape photographer. It's been quite a number of years since I've seen it this good, so I couldn't resist the urge to come up into the hills of the Isle of Man. So I've come to a location you can see behind me here called Craig Moor, and basically this is a series of old ruined farm buildings that sit in a beautiful and secluded woodland environment here up high in the hills. And with the covering of snow that we've got today, it just looks absolutely magical. It really does. The only downside is the light isn't really playing ball today. It's quite cloudy, although the forecast is suggesting this is going to start to break up. So the sun currently is off in this direction, and if we can just get a burst of light coming in, it will add some nice side illumination to the composition that I've got framed here. So basically, this is the main ruin within this series of ruins in this woodland, and you can just see the moss-covered old dry stone wall there with a nice coating of snow across the top. It just looks magnificent, and I've had to do a little bit of a tripod dance here to try and get the composition just the way I want it, because basically very, very slight movements can make or break this composition behind me. And what I'm trying to make sure is that the actual ruined building is visible in its entirety, i.e. there's no trees covering the left or the right side of the building. So I want the building to be seen in its entirety within the surrounding woodland, and tiny movements were really starting to have a detrimental impact on this. So after about 10 minutes of going backwards and forwards, this is the spot that I found, and I'm shooting at about 50 mils here. Shutter speed's largely irrelevant because we don't really have any movement today. There's not that much wind down in the woodland here. ISO, I'm shooting at ISO 64, the base ISO on my Z7 here, to try and maximise the dynamic range, because the dynamic range is a bit of a challenge with this kind of shot, because obviously I'm shooting within the woodland, which is obviously quite dark, but out behind the ruin there, outside the forest, the light levels are a lot higher. So the dynamic range is quite extreme here. So I want to try and avoid blowing out all the background there. So I may well have to do some bracketing, maybe 1-stop, 2-stop underexposure, and see if I can exposure blend that to try and get that nice sort of balance between foreground and background. But other than that, there's not much else to this really, and the light looks like it's trying to creep in, so I might be quite close to getting the shot. The light has arrived big style. It looks beautiful. I just love winter light. It's just the best light of the year. It really is, because it's currently about 11:30 in the morning, and at most other times of the year I'd be home by now. It'd be a waste of time shooting in lighting conditions this late in the day. But honestly, December, January sort of time, the light is just beautiful all day long, and it's just the best. It really is the best time of year to shoot. And I intend to be out from dawn to dusk tonight. I'm going to squeeze every last drop out of these conditions because it's just too good to miss. So I'm pretty sure I've got the shot behind me. I don't think it's an astonishing shot, but you know, I quite like the atmosphere of this location. It's unlike any other location on this island, and it never fails to make me feel something when I come here. So it's for that, it's always a special place to come and visit. So now I'm going to pack up, and then I'm going to hike up back through the forest and visit another set of ruins, which I think could look absolutely spectacular today. I set off at about 7 this morning, and it took me a good hour to actually hike up into the forests here, and I haven't seen a single soul since there, not even a footprint of anyone else. It's absolutely magnificent. It feels like I've literally got the entire landscape all to myself. And there's something about these winter conditions for me personally that it heightens my appreciation for nature, I find. And I don't know why that is. It might have something to do with the fact that you can see the footprints of various different animals in the snow. The contrast with the snow just makes it easier to spot wildlife within these sort of conditions. And I don't know, you just end up being more tuned to the bird song and everything around you. And I just absolutely adore these kind of days, I really do. When it comes to footprints, there's also, and you're going to find this hard to believe, but there's wallaby footprints all over this forest. There is hundreds of them, and I am staggered at how many footprints I've seen today. I haven't yet actually seen a wallaby. I assume that they're hiding away in the forest, keeping a beady eye on me, keeping their distance. But honestly, everywhere there is footprints. I'm staggered. There must be a massive population of wallabies here. And if you don't believe me, wallabies probably, 20 or 30 years ago escaped from our zoo, if you can call it that, here on the Isle of Man, and they actually set up a population in the wild here, and they've thrived. And this must be a hotspot for them, because honestly, it's teeming with them. I'll try my best to get one on camera for you. This location here is called Killer Bregga, and it's without doubt one of my favourite locations on the entire island. It's just magnificent. I've been here hundreds of times, I've shot it countless times, and I just never ever get bored of shooting it. I really don't. It's just got a certain magical quality to it, I think. But this is actually only the second time that I've ever been here in snow. The first time was about 10 years ago, so that shows you how irregular these kind of conditions are. They genuinely are quite rare on this island now, and I tell you what, it's not disappointing today. The landscape with the blanket of snow over just looks absolutely incredible. It really, really does. So the composition I'm shooting here is what I would consider to be the classic composition of this location. I've got my Z7, my 24-120 lens here, set up nice and high on the tripod, and I'm shooting at about 28mm, base ISO 64 to maximise my dynamic range, and shutter speed is largely irrelevant because, well, there's just no movement in the scene, to be honest. F14 to maximise my front to back sharpness. I don't think I need to focus stack this. I'm basically positioning the focus point out to the left of the scene. So you can see in the foreground here we've got these magnificent sharp stones. They're like razor-like teeth coming out, protruding out of this hedgerow, and they just make for such a great and interesting foreground, and they add a great degree of depth to this image. Behind that you've got the actual ruined farm buildings themselves, which are getting beautifully lit by the sun out this direction at the moment. And then right out to the back of the scene you've got the actual hills, some of the highest peaks on the island as well. And amongst those hills are other ruins just like this scattered across the landscape. And for me, this location sort of encompasses a lot of the best elements of this island, and I think that's why I am so thrilled every single time I come here. It's just got a certain magic that is difficult to find in many other places here. But yeah, I mean, it's relatively calm and stress-free photography, and that's the best kind of photography. I'm basically stood here shooting off images as the light changes and just generally taking it relatively easy. So yeah, I think after I've shot here, there's another composition I want to try a little bit further down off this same location, see if I can get something, and then we're going to move higher up because I've got another shot that I'd really like to try and get today before we lose the light. So the second composition that I'm looking to capture at Killerbrega is set up just beside me here. You can see my tripod in a relatively precarious position up on this hedgerow, and that's designed to just give it a little bit of height so we can kind of almost look down on the scene behind us here. Now, this building that you can see just in the middle of the scene here, that is what I would consider the main building at this complex here. And it tends to be the most photogenic building because of this gable end that faces into the light with its solitary window. It tends to work very, very well. And I've shot this particular composition a few times, but never in snow, so this is a first for me. That just sits in the middle of the composition, and then behind it you've got a few of these skeletal trees and a few other ruins. It works pretty well. And I just think with a little bit of light coming in from the side here, it really could look quite spectacular. But the weather gods are not playing ball at the moment. If we're getting bursts of light, it's very, very fleeting. It's like 30 seconds, a minute, and then it clouds over again. So I'm just going to have to persevere and wait here. But I'm fairly certain that sooner or later, the light will arrive. So the light did arrive, but no joking, it lasted about 20 seconds and it wasn't full direct light, it was kind of diffuse and soft. But I think it was enough for me to get the shot, but I'm not 100% certain. It's really, really frustrating. But the key thing when you're dealing with fleeting light, I don't think the best approach is to chase the light when it arrives. I think you've almost got to anticipate the light, get your composition set up and try and envisage how the light will interact with that composition. And then you have to be patient and hope that light arrives within the composition. I think that is the best approach when you're dealing with these kind of conditions, because the alternative is that you're reactive to the light when it arrives, and when you're getting bursts that are like 30 seconds long or a couple of minutes, it's quite stressful, and you don't really give yourself ample time to get the best possible shots. So yeah, that would be my suggestion in how to approach these kind of conditions. am tired. It never fails to amaze me how you can go from thinking you've got all the time in the world to literally running round like an idiot because you've got no time whatsoever. So this is the location that I wanted to come to and why I left Killebrega early. But I've forgotten how much of a walk it is to get back up here. It's taken me the best part of an hour, and that's jogging some sections with you know, all my heavy gear on my back. I am absolutely exhausted, and I've been rewarded with beautiful light, as you can see behind me. Oh God, I'm hoping we're going to get a burst of light here. It's currently about 3:30. We've got 1 hour of daylight left. The sun is getting very low in the horizon, and there's a lot of cloud around snuffing the light out. So if the light is going to come here, again, it's been the nature of today, it's going to be very, very rapid. So I've set my tripod up here, and really what I'm going for is a panorama. So I've got my camera set up in portrait orientation here, and I'm going to try and sweep across the landscape that you can see behind me here. This is called Drewdale, and it provides a fantastic view down over the central hills of the island. I'm just on the slopes of a hill called Slough Dew, and it's, in my experience, one of the best views of the central heart of the island here. So I just need a little bit of light because it's looking super flat at the moment. Please. Oh, frustrated. That's generally how I feel with regards to today, because the conditions are so good, but the light has been so unforgiving. 97% of the day has just been cloud. We've just had these little windows of light just reaching into the landscape occasionally, and it's made shooting very, very challenging. I know you don't necessarily need light to get good pictures, but it does make all the difference when you're shooting scenes like the one that you can see over my shoulder. Now, I have managed to capture a shot with some subtle touches of light hitting the peaks behind here, but I'm just not entirely convinced it's enough. I'm really not. Just got to constantly check over my shoulder to make sure it's not kicking off. So I'm not entirely certain the shot I've got is quite good enough and reaches the potential that I'd conjured up in my head, but who knows? We'll only find out when I get back into post-production. I'm basically shooting the panorama at about 70mm, and I've calculated on my geared head that 50% overlap is about 3 turns approximately, so I don't even need to look at each shot. I just take my first shot, 3 turns, second shot, 3 turns, etc. So it speeds up the workflow a little bit. And the key thing with any panorama is just shoot more than you need. Shoot more to the left, more to the right, and shoot a slightly wider focal length than what you plan to actually use in the final image. That will make your job in post-production so much more easy. But yeah, frustrating. There's still hope though. We've got 45 minutes. A miracle might occur. We might get a little window of light. I can see over there at the far north of the island there's some light, so there's the possibility that it could happen, but it just feels like the hills are creating the cloud. So as the air blows in over the sea and comes up these hills, it just creates the cloud. So it kind of feels like, regardless of what I'm seeing over there at the far north of the island, it just doesn't feel like I'm going to get any breaks in light here. But I'm keeping the faith. It could happen.